Go. Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know enough to do. Up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight? So that he is right. A loyal man who brings a job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed? It's which we must be true. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair, who measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and the change that's over too. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
It would help if I had the microphone in front of me. Welcome, welcome, welcome from the humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere, on this planet Earth, the only one we have, third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect, live with you for the 19th of May, 2024. Amazing, 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 amazing. It is the well, basically it's the 20th, and 19th is kind of toast and kind of in the bin, isn't it? It's so very, very good to be back with you. Let me tell you a little bit. Well, let me get through the business end of the program first, and that is welcome, welcome, welcome. And we have shared the program to let's get to the Facebook part of the old girl first, shall we? If I can find it quickly. I don't know that I can because I'm fumbling a great deal here. We have shared the program to before I was stopped, of course. There's the boss. Before I was stopped, of course, we shared the program to 100 different places. I probably have another 20 or 30 or more to go. But as you are quite aware, whenever I share, I get stopped somewhere along the way. So we got stopped as per usual. And so I've shared the program to 100 different places already across the Facebook universe, and we thank every single one of you. Groups, both large and small, individuals, local, regional, national groups, pages, everybody that allows us to be a part of your piece of the Facebook universe. Because, even though I've said on the program 1,000 times, probably way too many times, when we join Facebook, we agree to share everything with them. Everything that we share there is theirs. They own it. But I still think if you're the one that created a group, created a program like this, a page like ours, I still kind of think of that as yours. And so thank you for allowing us to be part of your piece of the Facebook universe live on this 19th. We've already shared to 100 different places, probably 20, 30 more to go. And that will come around 7 o'clock when my little temporary ban is lifted. It happens every week now. Every time that I'm live with you, I get stopped. It took me 3 days to share all of the show announcements to all of you because of Facebook, because they thought I was spamming and whatnot. So there's that. So thank you to all of you. Let me tell you that right now we are live, absolutely live, on my own Facebook page. Jeff Kennedy's right there on the screen. You can find my name right there. And also, of course, our home group Facebook page for the program and all things surrounding the program. That other side of information, it's right there in the square of my dear friend George. It's right there, that other side of information. We're also live right now on that other side of information, our YouTube channel. Yes, we have a YouTube channel. We are live there right now. If you're not a Facebook fan, don't have it, don't like to use it, you go to our YouTube channel, that other side of information, and you can watch us there. We, of course, are live around the globe on one of the originators, one of the very first global internet radio stations on planet Earth, and that is hot101.net. Wherever you are on this planet of ours, if you can connect to the internet, you can listen to hot101.net, and you should be doing that. If you are below, above, or on planet Earth, you can listen to hot101.net. Our name is our web address. Just type in hot101.net. Then you go right to the homepage and boom, you're listening. No credit cards, no fingerprints, no retina scan, no blood sample. Don't have to sign away your mortgage or your firstborn. You go to the website, page opens, and you are listening. It's that simple. If you don't want to use the main website, you don't have to. You can use any of our apps, the Apple App Store for Apple devices, Google Play Store for Android devices, and for all other types of devices, the TuneIn Radio app. Go to the search bar in the App Store, Google Play Store, or on the TuneIn Radio app, and just type in hot101.net. What a terrible time to get a scratchy throat. Type in hot101.net and you will find our apps. When you download the app, you tap it, it opens, and you're listening straight away. You tap it, it opens, and you're listening. No registration, no password, no phone number, no credit card, no firstborn, no blood sample, no none of that. It's super, super easy to listen to hot101.net everywhere under, on, and above planet Earth. So please, please do so. Hot101.net is an extraordinary station with truly and deeply, deeply talented people. Just check it out. They deserve your support. You deserve for yourself to give them a listen. You will enjoy it. I have no doubt in my mind. We're also part of the TCP Media Group and proud to be so, he tried to say. Can you tell that the voice and the mouth is a little rusty after 2 weeks? But that's us. So that is the business end of the program. Very, very thrilled that my dear friend and the executive technical producer of the program, our staff, is online right here. The highest paid man on the program is with us right now, and that is George. It is always a better show when George is here. I always feel better when George is here. It's just it's a better thing. It's a good thing. Isn't that a Martha Stewart thing when she says it's a good thing? I don't know. I shouldn't probably get into that, but regardless, let me welcome someone, because I'm so terrible at typing at the same time. Typing and speaking to you at the same time. I have pants, aren't I? But we're thrilled that you're here. And so let me just tell you a little bit about, well, first off, tonight, we have several different topics that I would like to try to get to. I know I'm not always good at getting to all my different topics, but I would love to at least try to share with you what I wanted to get into. And that is Well, George, it would help if I click the right thing. I need to give a certain thing to George, a certain technical ability, and I keep clicking on the absolute wrong place. I don't know what's going on. All right, that's it. There's a few topics that I want to get to. We do have a guest coming. He's coming on the latter half of the program. That is my dear friend, Rich Wilkins, who is as consummate and political and seasoned a political professional as you're going to find. He's done everything you can possibly think of, from, you know, dropping lid on doors and knocking doors, all the way to running campaigns and strategizing and messaging. And he's traveled the country doing this work, in addition to doing an overwhelming amount of it right here in our own Lehigh Valley. He is from right here in the Lehigh Valley, consummate Phillies fan, by the way. And he's just done so much. I thought that, in this terribly, terribly, terribly important election cycle, what a perfect time to hear from him about the importance of this and what he'll be working on, what he sees, what his experience tells him could be happening, what we could be looking at. And he will be with us, and he'll be doing that later in the program. For now, let me just catch you up a little bit on what has been missing, or what we've been doing while we were missing. Last Sunday, very easy to explain. It was Mother's Day. No way should you be here listening to me blather on and bloviate when you should be spending time with whoever that figure is for you. Mom, grandmom, aunt, godmother, sister, even, whoever that mom figure, or by the way, if there's more than one, mom and grandma, mom and aunt, whoever that mom figure is for you, that's where you should have been last week. And if your mother's no longer with you, or if that particular mom figure is no longer with you, then I thought it's only, and we do this for every Mother's Day, by the way, that it was only appropriate that we get the heck out of the way and allow you to be engrossed in family, as you should be on a Mother's Day. The Sunday before that was ceremonies at our church that took a very, very good part of the day. We did not get home until right before I was going to have to start getting ready for the program. So I just kind of knew it wasn't going to fit in, and which sounds way worse than I mean it, that, I couldn't fit you all in. Of course, this is important to me, what we do here. I know it's important to some of you. I know others listen and enjoy. It may not hold the high importance, and that's fine too. However you take in the program, whatever you might think of it, is certainly your opinion. Look at that. Wow, the idea of personal privacy, of you to be in control of what you listen to and watch. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, so we just couldn't, we just couldn't be with you for the last 2 weeks. It was just life gets in the way sometimes. And this was one time where it had to kind of get in the way. Which again also sounds worse than I probably mean it. But anyway, that's us. That's the last 2 weeks. And then here's the goofy thing. We're here with you tonight. We're not going to be with you again next week either, because it is Memorial Day weekend, and that's an easy one. We never are with you on a holiday weekend. Christmas, New Year's, Easter. We actually did Palm Sunday, I think, this year as well, which was important, I thought. Mother's Day, Memorial Day, Father's Day, 4th of July falls on a Thursday, I think it is this week, or this year. So I'm not sure what we're doing that week quite yet. Labor Day, Thanksgiving, sometimes Halloween if it falls on a weekend, so that parents can be out with their kids trick-or-treating instead of listening to me, put a word salad all over you. But we're here. It was a nice 2 weeks. it is there is a little extra relaxation when I know I don't have to prepare for this. But it is very, very nice to be back with you. It's nice to take a little step away, but we are great to, we're very grateful and very happy to be back with you tonight. So that said, let's get to a couple of the things that I wanted to get to. So where do we start? Let's get into a couple of the topics that I wanted to talk about. Some happenings from the last couple of weeks. And again, Rich will be joining us. He'll get here when he gets here. Kind of in the way that I try to approach the program in general is kind of the way I deal with guests. A guest is a bonus. It is a gift. And anyone willing to spend their time with us and give their time to us here on the program, and of course we hope sharing their expertise and knowledge and all of that with you, that's a bonus for us. We don't pay anybody to be here. I'd probably have a lot more guests if I did, but we don't pay anybody to be here, so they're donating their time. So we try to treat guests the same way that we treat the program, generally speaking, that we're just trying to relax, trying to take a deep breath, lower the temperature a tiny bit as best that we can, at the same time coming to you and with you about desperately important topics, and only coming to you with those topics from a background of history and science and facts and data and truth. And it is with that we try to talk about a couple of the topics that came up in the past couple of weeks that I found fascinating, that I hope you will too. I can't say we're going to break any new ground on some of these topics, but they're exceptionally historical and noteworthy, and we should be getting into them. So with that said, let's start with the trial of the ex-president in New York, currently happening in the Southern District in New York City, in the Southern District of New York, Manhattan DA Bragg. What the media has, I think, all too lazily, in all too lazy of a status, referred to as the quote-unquote hush money trial. It is not a hush money trial. Hush money took place as part of the illegalities, but it is not what the trial itself is about. It is a form, or not form. It is an illegality in and of itself, but it is only part of the greater story. And that is that Trump and his cohorts paid off an adult film actress to stay quiet about the affair he had with her just weeks after his youngest son was born, because he feared that news of this would derail his presidential campaign. Now, we have seen subsequently that no matter what seems to come out about Trump, his family, his business dealings, his personalities, I did say that plural, the stories of abuse, of rape, of scams and grifting and fake businesses and inflated all of it. He seems to get away with all of it. The fact, with all of the charges stacked against him, the fact that only one trial has actually gone to a courtroom so far is staggering to me. And it continues to prove that there are many, many, many layers of justice, quote unquote, justice, in this country. If Donald Trump was a 16-year-old Black or Hispanic kid from the South Bronx, or from St. Louis, or Watts in Los Angeles, or Houston, or Detroit, or Philadelphia, Boston, Miami, blue and red state alike. If he was a 16-year-old kid of color with a 16th of an ounce of pot in his pocket, he would have been arrested, detained, an unachievable bail, probably in court, and sentenced within about a week. And maybe I'm exaggerating a tiny bit with a week, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, no more than a month. But because he is a wealthy, generally speaking, white individual, the very act of campaign, finance illegalities, campaign, trying to rig a campaign, stealing classified documents, including secrets about the United States nuclear arsenal, trying to steal an election in the state of Georgia, all of that. And he somehow managed to stay out of court for almost 4 years. If that in and of itself doesn't tell us that there are many, many, many layers of quote unquote justice in this country, I'm not sure what does. The fact that our justice system treats that 16-year-old Black kid with pot as a much more dangerous individual than the ex-president who stole nuclear secrets and probably sold them, because the documents can no longer be found. So they're somewhere. They're either hidden or gone. Because remember, when shortly after Trump took office, he had the foreign minister and ambassador to the United States from Russia in the Oval Office, where he gave them a name of an American spy who was dead within 48 hours. To think that he didn't sell those documents, you have to be daft to a pretty deep degree. It is shocking to me that this continues to drag on. And it clearly displays that there are different layers of justice in this country. One for white billionaires and one for another for everyone else. Because depending on the crime, a local mayor drives drunk, the cops take him home. A black kid drives in a white town after midnight, he's going to jail. And I would even say, to be honest with you, a poor kid driving in a maybe wealthier town would be pulled over and probably arrested simply for driving through the town. I lived in one. I lived in a town where any person of color from anywhere who would be driving through this town after dark would get pulled over, period. And then after midnight, anyone who was not from that town would get pulled over. I've lived in these places. I'm not proud of it. But it is what it is. And I'm thrilled that this trial is going on. But I think what the greater country should be worried about is, why aren't the other ones happening? Why isn't the documents case in Miami, or no, I shouldn't say really, in Florida, although the courtroom is in Miami? Why isn't that case underway? Why isn't the Georgia case underway? Hell, if you want to really boil it down to the most simple of questions, how does he keep finding lawyers? He doesn't pay any of them. And all of them, because I can't think of another one who gained from it. All of them seem to take almost dire, irrevocable, professional. It ends careers. It ends legal careers. It ends them. Some of the lawyers who have represented him have never had the same type of career ever again. It ends people. And he's notorious for not paying any of them. Rudy Giuliani has still not been paid a dime for all the time he spent on behalf of Trump. Now, he got wined and dined. He got to hang out at official things at the White House. He got to play White House counsel. But he hasn't been paid for any of it. Sidney Powell's been disbarred. Jenna Ellis has been disbarred. John Eastman's going to jail. How does he keep finding lawyers? But I digress to a point. So what are some of the things that are happening in this trial that I think we're missing the point on? And to be honest with you, I think the media is missing a point. A couple things. First off, defense attorneys, and notice Trump always has at least one woman. He seems to have to force women to have sex with him, but he somehow always seems to get one to represent him in court. And so that his one female attorney, they did their best to try to shame, taunt, tease, belittle Stormy Daniels as much as humanly possible. It was very much of a, they tried to turn the New York court and the case into a very biblical type court. She's just a prostitute. She has sex for money. She's not a person. She doesn't count. And every time they did that, Stormy Daniels had a retort for them. She shut them down. And she did it with grace and composure and maturity and poise that we would not ascribe to someone like her, he said in quotes. We just think that people in the adult industries, because there are many, are throwaway people, that they're broken, that they're almost fake plastic, that they're some sort of like ethereal creation. They're not real human beings. Stormy Daniels showed you that she is a real human being. She's married, she has children. What she does in the adult industry is what she does for a living and makes pretty damn good money doing it. But she's not a throwaway human being. And every time they tried to nail her, catch her in a lie, create some of those lies created, by the way. And Daniels herself said, yeah, she changed her story a couple times. She changed it out of fear. Again, she told the story of the man that came to the preschool when she picked up her child and threatened her child right in front of her. So she did change her story a couple times. But every time the defense attorneys tried to make fun of her, belittle her, shame her in any way, she was prepared for it. And she shot back and shut down each line of questioning. If nothing else. Oh, and by the way, let me take that one step further. It would seem to me that somebody like Stormy Daniels cannot do that if she's outright lying. I think it's very much harder to keep your composure in a trial that is being followed around the globe. To keep your composure and to keep yourself steady when you know that everything you're saying is a lie. It's harder to stay calm then. So why did Stormy Daniels stay so calm, so poised, so under control? Because she was telling the truth. And Trump's lawyers had no comeback for it. The truth shall set you free. It's one of the oldest, phrases. It's one of the first things we're taught as kids. The truth is always the best policy. The truth shall set you free. Honesty is the best policy. Stormy Daniels was honest. It was honest. It was truthful. It was the truth. What else can I say? It was honest. And they tried to shame her. They tried to make her less than human. And every time they tried, she was ready for it. And at the end of the day, they had no comeback for her. They could not turn her into the bad witness. And then we get to Michael Cohen. Trump's former, Daisy's chiming in. Trump's former fixer, his former attorney. And again, they tried like hell to denigrate him. See, they didn't try to defend Trump. They have not thus far really attempted to defend Trump. They have instead built their entire case around attacking all the witnesses. And the interesting thing is that even as Trump's attorneys attacked Cohen, well, you're a convicted felon. Yes, I am. I'm a convicted felon because I did what he told me to do, because I committed felonies on his behalf, at his direction, with his money. And every time they attacked Michael Cohen, he had an answer. Well, you're just angry at Donald Trump. You want to see him go to jail. Michael Cohen, yes, I do want to see him go to jail because he broke the law, because he ruined my life. I went to jail for him. He should be in jail because he orchestrated all of it. Again, he's got to come back for all of it. I heard a lot of legal pundits speculate about whether putting Cohen on the stand at all was smart, or if saving him for last was smart, because he does have a checkered past. He was the fixer. He has been, well, accepted a plea deal. He went to federal prison. He is a convicted felon. But again, every time they attacked him, you're a felon, you're a cheat, yeah, yes, I am. I am all of those things. And the reason I am is because of him, because of Trump. Now, burden of proof here is overwhelmingly on the prosecution. They must prove, quote unquote, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Trump is guilty. It only takes one juror to hold the whole thing up. It only takes one juror for a hung jury. It could possibly only take one juror to sway the other 11 to acquit. But if you have listened to the transcripts, if you've watched the coverage of this, because Scott, heaven forbid we could have a camera in the courtroom. It's only 2024 in the United States of America. Heaven forbid we could have a camera. And I'm not always a proponent of cameras in the courtroom. I think they should be in the Supreme Court. Every other court has cameras. Sadly, there's no cameras in this one. I do think occasionally you get people mugging for the camera and things like that, but I think this really is one where you might have been a real public service to have cameras. So I don't see how, with any logic or intellectual honesty, how he can be acquitted. The defense has not defended their own client, and they have not sufficiently smeared the prosecution's witnesses to create that shadow of a doubt. So this should be a no-brainer. But again, it only takes one juror. Just one. Only one. This is as close to an open and shut case as you're going to find. The money can be traced through from the Cohen to the Shell Corporation, Cohen's second mortgage, to the through to the National Enquirer, the repayment of Cohen by Trump, all of it. Or no, I think he repaid the National Enquirer. But whatever. All the money can be traced. All the discussions are there. Every witness has testified to these discussions. David Pecker, Stormy Daniels, Daniels' lawyers, Cohen. They've all, and the story is consistent all the way throughout. This should be a no-brainer. But what possibly might be even scarier is that it still might not lead to a conviction because it's the way our system is set up. If this number of witnesses and amount of obvious evidence against the defendant, again, I'm going to stick to the same example, was put up against a 16-year-old black kid from Miami because he had an ounce of pot in his pocket. That's a throwaway human. Throw him in jail, leave him there till he's 50, 60. We treat these people differently because they're not white billionaires, or at least they're not perceived as billionaires. I think we all know by now Trump is broke, or at least certainly doesn't have the money he says he has when he has to do a GoFundMe for bail money. He's clearly not a billionaire. A billionaire doesn't need to beg you for your money. He might take it from you because he doesn't pay taxes, or the company he runs sells you crap stuff that you buy, made in China, that you buy. Mark Zuckerberg does not need to beg you for money. You know he's a billionaire. In fact, I think he's worth over 200 billion. Jeff Bezos doesn't have to beg you for money. He wants you to use Amazon. That's how he makes money. But he doesn't have to beg you for it when he needs it. Somehow Trump needs to beg you for money every time he needs it. Campaign stops, the campaign itself, travel, court cases, lawyers. He has to beg you for that money. And when he's not begging you directly for it, he's taking it from the Republican National Committee. 40 cents of every dollar donated to the Republican National Committee goes in his pocket, and or to pay legal bills. When you donate to his PAC, his Political Action Committee, PAC, the Make America Great Again PAC, I think it is, or the America First, although there might be two of them. I might have that conflated. You please feel free to tell me in the comments if I have that wrong. I think it's two separate PACs, though. I think there's a Make America Great Again PAC and an America First. That said, when you donate to them, I think it's between 40 and 60 cents of that goes to pay his legal bills. It's why his campaign can't do what campaigns do. It's why they don't have field offices. It's why they can't hire canvassers. They can't hire regional campaign managers. It's a shocking. It's strange. It's one of those things that's both shocking and yet not, all at the same time. It's kind of one of those things. Like, I don't know. Let me pick a. It's like hearing. Oh, it's a really bad example. It's like hearing somebody passed in a car accident. So and so died in a car accident. Oh my God, I can't believe it. But yeah, you can, because car accidents happen. You know, I almost said Tesla. That was wrong, wasn't it? SpaceX launched a rocket and it blew up. Oh, no way. Well, yeah, okay. That's kind of what this is, especially if he is acquitted. Because I know that's the reaction I'll have. I can't believe for the life of me he was acquitted. And then I'll take a couple breaths and go, oh, yeah, actually, I can. It's very much the same thing about the circumstance that we find ourselves in as a country, that a former president is actually in court because he paid an adult film actress to stay quiet. We know presidents throughout history had affairs and different lovers and, different women on the side. We know they did. These two sure as hell did. But there's rumors of affairs that Washington had affairs. Jefferson, we know, had quite a number of children from lots of different ladies, some that worked for him. We know that Woodrow Wilson is reputed to have had affairs. Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. It, it we know that this has happened throughout history, and this is the first one that tried to sway an election by hiding the information that he had won. I I very much look at this. Well, and it's one of those things where you can say to yourself, I can't believe even people who don't like Trump, by the way, I can't believe a former president of the United States is sitting in a courtroom for this. And then you take a couple of breaths and you take a couple of thoughts and think, oh, yeah, I can. Because of the quality of the individual, or lack of quality of the individual. I don't know which way this is going to go. I think conviction is a no brainer. I think it's obvious. I believe his defense has been non existent. Again, they don't seem to be defending Trump as much as they are attacking the prosecution and the witnesses of the prosecution. I wish I knew why I was so itchy. I am so itchy today. Um, um, so I don't know which way this is going to go, but I think we're missing. There's some key points of this, which is why I went on this whole diatribe in the first place, and I'm a hard time collecting keeping my thoughts straight because I've got a bunch of things happening at me. I'm doing a very poor job of keeping myself straight here. Um, is that we should be disgusted at the way Stormy Daniels was treated as a disposable human being, and that how she was attempted to be portrayed by the defense as not a human at all, but rather some sort of doll, some sort of toy, some sort of creature for Trump's entertainment. She believes she was sexually assaulted. Remember, a previous judge in the civil case with E. Jean Carroll came to the conclusion that Trump raped E. Jean Carroll. And they tried to make E. Jean Carroll some sort of cartoon character, some sort of disposable human being. Well, Mr. Trump was young, attractive, and you liked him. You deserved it. So if you read the transcript, never once does the Trump team look at Stormy Daniels and say, you deserve this. You're just a porn actress. They don't say it that directly. But there is the line of questioning, and I'm paraphrasing. Believe me, I'm not quoting. I can't remember the quotes. Where Trump's female attorney says, because I'm not using their names here, they don't deserve it. I'll give them no credit and I'll give them no publicity. Well, you sleep with men for a living. Why would you be so shocked to come out of the bathroom and see a naked man in front of you? As if to somehow say that's all you are. You sleep with men. That's all you are. No, she's a wife and a mother. Would I want my wife doing that for a living? No. It's also none of my business. That's their marriage. The attempt to try to frame Michael Cohen, and I don't mean frame as in a criminal, but like picture frame. Michael Cohen is nothing other than the felon that he now is, ignoring the fact of how he became one. These are human beings. I think faith tells us that when Michael Cohen sits in front of that jury and in that courtroom and says, I did a lot of bad things. I did a lot of wrong things. I'm a better human being now than I was then. We have an obligation to accept that until he proves us differently. We have an obligation to accept that truth, his truth. We have an obligation to accept his truth as the truth. So, and the fact that the media continues to call this the hush money trial because sex sells instead of an election interference trial, an election manipulation trial, which is really what it is. And then last but not least, the fact that in the face of overwhelming evidence that he could still possibly be acquitted. Those are the four big things that I take away from this trial that should trouble every American. Left or right, red hat or blue hat, or no hat. Stormy Daniels is not an object. She is not a throwaway human being. Michael Cohen is not innocent. He sat there under oath in the witness stand and said, no, I'm not innocent. I am a felon. I did these things. The fact that if Trump was a 17-year-old black kid, he'd already be in jail, probably for the next 30 or 40 years. And then the fact that there's still a chance he could walk. It should trouble every American, no matter where you come from, no matter what side of the aisle you come from. It should bother you. I ask you this question every episode. At some point, George will correct me if I'm wrong, as he should. But I don't have what I'm looking for in here. Ugh. Ugh. Are we no better than this? Are we truly no better than this? I did not support Trump. I do not now. I never will. I lived in North Jersey. We all knew he was a fraud. when he first started sniffing around politics. We all knew he was a fraud. Everybody in New York City knew he was a fraud. He never became a threat to the nation. So sadly, the authorities looked the other way and they didn't bother with him. His buildings didn't collapse. He wasn't killing people. His crimes were not embarrassing to the city of New York or any of the other places where he put his name on properties. Scotland, Vegas, Florida. Because I don't know exactly what the town Mar-a-Lago's in. I think it's West Palm. I could be wrong about that. They weren't embarrassing enough to people. That everybody knew he was a fraud. They knew he was a fraud. They knew it. He used to get in verbal spats with Ed Koch all the time. Trump was brutal to David Dinkins, who was not a great mayor, but he was black, so he attacked him all the time. It's just, are we no better than this? He is the least competent man ever to run for the office, let alone hold it. He sure as hell is the angriest one. The fact that he continues to lead in some of these polls, and I'm not putting a hell of a lot of weight into polls, by the way. We could talk about polls later in the program. But the fact that he continues to lead in so many of these polls, the fact that he maintains this very, very steady 40% and well over 90% of his own party should bother all of us. It should bother us as Americans. It should bother us, all of us who consider democracy to be a pure thing, to be an ideal that we should all hold ourselves up to. It's frightening. It should be frightening. It should bother you. It should make you queasy. That even though that we could do no better as a country than this would-be dictator, a man who wishes he had an ounce of the charisma that Mussolini had. Who did nothing significant in his 4 years in office other than cut taxes and strip national parks so corporations could go in and take the resources therein, including native tribal lands. And who now sits in court for trying to rig an election. Exactly what he accuses everybody else of doing. For trying to rig, stack, falsify, and interfere in an election. And yet somehow 90+% of his own former political party, or I should say former operating political party, because it is still technically a political party, but it doesn't function as one. How this is the man who's running for office. This is the guy. This is the guy who's the nominee. And they can do no better. No better. That's the best they can come up with. That's the best they can do. It's scary. It should bother all of us. Are we no better than this? I think we are, but we better show it. We better show it. 7:01. I can't see. I have glasses on and I still can't see the clock on the screen. 7:01 Eastern Daylight Time. And the Kennedy Effect is live with you, back for the 19th of May, 2024. We have missed you for 2 weeks. We will not be with you again next week. I realize it's been a very choppy May. I beg your forgiveness, but we had very personal things to do on May 6th. It was Mother's Day last week. It will be Memorial Day weekend next week. We will be with you back again here on June 2nd. June the 2nd. No guests scheduled for then, by the way, but we'll be back on June 2nd. Wherever you might be. Oh, and I need to go back and finish my work because I have more places that I can send the program, and I almost forgot because I got blocked. I should be able to do it by now anyway. So we've already shared the program to about 100 places, and that's about to grow. There it is. Can he do it? Can he do it? Can he do it? Yes, he can. Yes, he can. I'm back to being able to finish the sharing process. Awesome, awesome, awesome. You're getting to listen to it. It's boring as sin. But maybe I can't walk and chew gum away from. Oh, am I already stopped? I think I'm stopped. Well, it didn't take long. Gosh. Yep, I got stopped again. I don't know where I got stopped this time. That said, we I think we made it out. How many did I make it to this time? I know this is incredibly boring radio, and I'm so sorry, but I'm just entirely too curious now at this point to find out how many more I made it to before we got stopped yet again. 104. That was it. Well, I guess I'm not gonna get out again until 8 o'clock. Facebook's getting harder and harder to use. I don't know. It's getting harder and harder to use. So we've shared the program to apparently 104 different places. By the way, 104 different places that are yours, in my humble opinion. I know Facebook created the program or the platform, but I happen to think when you create something, it's yours. The agreement that you tap onto when you join Facebook would tell you different, but I happen to think it's still yours. So wherever you are taking the program in, anywhere on the 104 places that I've shared it to, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I know I've been a little bit distracted today because I've got different screens going on. I have people coming at me and that I'm trying to say hello to and trying to answer questions I'm trying to answer. Not show questions. Sadly, it's other stuff. Places I should have been tonight, but I didn't know about. But that said, so it's been a little scattered. I apologize, but please know to everyone who has allowed us to be a piece of your corner of the Facebook universe, we thank you so very, very much. We could not do it without you. We thank you very, very much for allowing us to do that. If you want to interact with us, as only Randall has so far, it's been very quiet, very, very quiet in the chat so far tonight. And that's fine. That's okay. You don't have to be loud. But very quiet so far. Please come to my own Facebook timeline page, whatever, I don't know what we call it now, feed. I don't know what we're calling it this week. Jeff Kennedy, you'll see me there. Also, we are live on our That Other Side of Informations, both on Facebook and YouTube. We are live right now. You can join us on either one. You can comment, ask questions, yell at me, talk softly, agree, disagree, whatever it might be. You can do that with us literally right now. And this is a great time to do it because our guest has not arrived quite yet. He's coming. He hasn't quite arrived quite yet. That said, um, thank you for allowing it. Just thank you for being here. And again, I know it's been a very choppy month. In this world, not being on the air regularly is a killer. People come to know when they can find you and where they can find you. And so we haven't exactly fed into that very well this month, but again, life happens. We happen to be at our place of worship on May 6th. It was Mother's Day last week. It'll be Memorial Day next week. It's just happening. It's just a choppy month. And summer, of course, there's always a little less listenership in the summer because people are outside like they should be. Like, I got to be honest, I almost kind of wish I was. I can tell even through the darkening curtains that it's sunny outside. It got warm today. It's supposed to be sunny and warm mostly for the rest of the week. It's just nice. And I know it's been a little choppy. So I apologize to all of you, and I'm very, very thankful to all of you who continue to stay with us and help the program grow. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. Super, super simple. Type it in, hot101.net. You find us, the website pops up, and you can listen immediately. Something I thought about probably a couple months ago is just how easy it is to listen to hot101.net, how you're not ever asked to create a profile or login or password or, sign this agreement or look at our terms of service or any of that. Hot101.net does not do any of that. When you go to www.hot101.net, it opens and you're listening. Done. You don't have to do a thing. You don't even have to click on anything. If you use our apps, Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, or the Tune In radio app, you open it and you're listening. It's that simple. No password, no login, no profile, no credit card, no nothing. You're just listening and enjoying. It's exceptionally easy to use. If you are anywhere below, on, or above Earth, if you can connect to the internet, you can listen to hot101.net, period, end of story. Desktops, laptops, tablets, phones. You can Bluetooth to speakers, earbuds, headphones, Bluetooth it in the car. You can even tell Alexa to play hot101.net. It's exceptionally simple. And we encourage you to do exactly that. Also part of the TCP Media Group. Happy to be with you all at TCP again this week, as usual. There is one other, there's not really one other topic that I wanted to get to. But one of the other topics that I wanted to get to very quickly is an interesting discussion that I heard on Morning Joe while we were away from you. It is college graduation season, as we all know. And as we all know, there has been quite a number of protests on campuses throughout the country over the Israeli invasion of Gaza as a response to the invasion of Israel by Hamas. And it seems between these two warring, well, it doesn't seem, it's just the truth of it. Between these two warring factions, it is innocent Palestinian Gazans caught in the middle. Some 30 plus thousand of them at last that I saw that have been civilians that have been killed, and a number of those children. There is mass starvation. There is a lack of food, medicine, shelters in Gaza. Gaza's a strip of land about the size of, if I'm not mistaken, it was about the size of the island of Manhattan, and had 4 million people stuffed into it. So as the protests on college campuses remind us of the 60s and grew and spread throughout the country, if you've listened to this program, I tend to waver a great deal, depending on the week, about how I feel about Joe Scarborough. As someone who considers themselves to be pretty smart, I mean, generally pretty smart, not a world-class intellect, not a Stephen Hawking, not anything like that, but pretty smart and astute. I find myself really wavering between deeply enjoying Joe Scarborough and just saying to myself as I watch, what is he talking about? All the way back to, this sort of newfound, I don't want to say newfound liberalism, but he's definitely softened his fascistic conservative views during his time on the program, and certainly his relationship with Mika. But every now and then, that old Gingrich, ultra conservative, bordering on fascistic voice comes through. I don't think Joe Scarborough is a fascist by any means. Truly, I don't. But he does drift in that direction at times. He was swept into office on a wave of anti-Clinton hysteria. He was a Gingrich guy. He came in with the Gingrich wave, if you will, in 94. And every now and then, you will hear that voice come out. And that happened during a discussion that he and the panel were having regarding campus protests. Now, some of these campus protests have been handled. They couldn't have been. They could not have been, could not be. Now, let's say these campus protests are going to die out because classes are over at most, if not all, colleges and universities. Last week, certainly this week, colleges and universities are usually done by Memorial Day. So these protests are just naturally going to fizzle out because all the students are going to go home. So there's that. So this is not an ongoing scourge across America. This is called free speech. It's called the right to publicly assemble, petition your government for redress. It's a little something called the First Amendment. And gee whiz, that means people that you don't agree with can do the very same thing. So that said, and we also know now that much like many of the great protests of recent times, Occupy Wall Street was one, where law enforcement individuals, as well as people who are not students on these campuses and who are looking to push their own agenda, are sort of, I don't like to say infiltrating because it makes it sound terribly, almost science fiction-y. But they're infiltrating these protests and making them louder, more violent, more. And lost in the national conversation is the fact that dozens, if not hundreds, of institutions of higher learning across this country have had perfectly peaceful protests. Some of them timed. You can protest today on the quad from 1 to 4. So they protest on the quad from 1 to 4, and then they're done. I believe it was UCLA where they did have a protest encampment. The administration said, "What do you want?" Protesters said, "We want to talk to you." And the university said, "No problem. Come on in. We'll schedule a meeting. We'll get the full board in front. And let's talk to each other." Vanderbilt University, whose president was on Morning Joe as I was driving to work one morning. Why, why are you not having violence on your campuses, but yet you're having protests? So because I told the protesters, you can protest all you wish. It's your constitutional right. The instant something goes violent or you break the law, I'm shutting it all down. And the individuals who did cross that line were arrested, kicked off campus, and expelled like that. The remaining protests, which the administration then allowed to continue, remained peaceful. But we're not hearing about those because it's not sexy. There's a saying in media that if it bleeds, it leads. So what led this discussion? Video of the New York City Police Department moving into Columbia like an occupying army, tearing down the encampment and throwing the students off campus. And by all accounts that I have been exposed to so far, and again, if anybody has a counter one that they want to show me, I am happy to look at it, that the students that did break into the one building on Columbia were not Columbia students. They had become part of the protests. They had become part of the group that was camped on the Columbia campus, but they were not students. And so what am I getting at in this whole very long story? So this discussion is being carried on with and about these campus protests. And Joe Scarborough starts on a diatribe, and the longer some of his diatribes continue, the less you know that he's thinking before he says what he says. Either because he's running out of words or because the emotion is taking over. And by the way, that would not make him terribly different from a lot of us. That we have a point to make, but then we start to expound on it And sometimes our emotion takes us in different places. That doesn't make the question I'm about to tell you about any less stupid, but it happens. The same way, or at least not dissimilarly from the fish that we caught that was this big until we tell somebody else, and then it was that one, and then it was that one, it was that one, it was that one. And it gets out of hand until at some point, the fish is so big that the person that you're telling about it is looking at you going, yeah, okay, sure it was. So during this debate, Joe Scarborough says, there are multiple civil wars going on the African continent. There are governments in Central America rounding up people and torturing them. There is a war in Ukraine. The first major full-out ground war on the European continent since 1945. Why isn't anybody protesting against any of that? Now think of the stupidity of that question. And I'll use that word lightly, but think of the sheer stupidity of that question. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier on in the beginning of this, think about what I had said before, that right-wing voice, that Gingrich freshman class voice comes out of Joe every now and then. And this was one of those times where why aren't you protesting any of that? Well, it's really simple. And actually, maybe it's not so simple. Maybe we should be protesting against the ongoing governmental violence against their own citizens in these various countries in Central America, since it was the United States and the Reagan administration that destabilized all those governments in the first place. That led to exactly where we are now. That led to the thousands and thousands of people who continue to flood to the southern border in hopes of just simply staying alive. Some of them not even necessarily just a better life, but life itself. So maybe it isn't as simple as I think it is, but the general answer is pretty simple. So when Joe Scarborough gets on one of his really right-wing rants, why aren't these college students protesting against the civil war in the Sudan? And the answer is really quite simple. Because the United States isn't financing those wars. We are largely, but not exclusively, funding and arming the Ukrainians. Really nobody in the country protesting against that, because the overwhelming majority of people, the last one I saw, it was 78% of people. Be damn sure there's some right-wingers in there, support what we are doing in Ukraine. They know, the Russians have told us, that it's just step one. Why aren't college students protesting the civil wars across Africa? We're not paying for them, at least not that we know of. The instant the October 6th attacks took place, the U.S. immediately told Israel, what do you need? Money, arms, you name it, you got it. And that's exactly what we did. We gave them money, and we gave them even more weaponry. By the way, the total used to be $3 billion. I'm not sure that it is still that. It might be higher. But in every well, we don't do budgets in this country. We don't do yearly budgets, fiscal budgets anymore in this country. We just do continuing resolutions. But every funding resolution has money for Israel. When we still did yearly fiscal budgets in this country, it was $3 billion of just free money given to Israel every year for them to do whatever they wanted. Sometimes they bought weapons, sometimes they used it for infrastructure, whatever they used it for. But $3 billion of their national budget was a guaranteed just free $3 billion from the US. But this is why students, especially students of color, and especially Muslim students, are so upset. Because we as a country are supporting all of this. Yes, Robert, I do blame Reagan because it's absolutely the truth. The truth hurts sometimes. If we had the Reagan administration, I'll tell you the whole story of it and I'll educate you about it in just a moment. Because as grateful as I am that you're listening, as much as I consider you a friend, your door is always open to me. We will always break bread. I know that your door is always open to me, as mine is to you, and we will always break bread together. This, a simple comment of you're always blaming Reagan, happens to be correct. But I'll get to that story. So I'm not here to tell you that all of the protests have been correct or have been conducted well. There has been property damage. There has been violence. It has been proven, by the way, that some of this have been done by intentional actors who are not students of these colleges and universities. But there have been dozens more protests that have been completely peaceful and completely within the constitutional rights of those students, where the students and the administrations have talked to each other. Now, I know peace doesn't always make great ratings, but that's happening too. I also happen to believe that when the president of Colombia was drug up in front of the Republican House and abused for hours about her policy for allowing protests on campus, the fact she's a woman of color is no small thing. If the president of Colombia was a white male, especially a wealthy white male, not so sure they would have been drug up in front of the house. But let's also dig a little deeper. Let's also dig a little deeper, as Robert is saying right now in the quote, in the quotes, bleh, in the comments. He's 100% correct. That's why our friendship is so unique. Gosh, he and I can go like this, and then 2 seconds later we can go like this. It's a brilliant thing, the friendship I have with this man. The whole damn country could learn something from it. Concerning protesters, always defend free speech, but the infiltrators are the issue. He's 100% right. He's right. How many protests across this country have been completely 100% peaceful? They've gotten permits to gather, to march on streets, to have to use open public spaces. But somehow that doesn't quite get the coverage it deserves. That the Constitution works, that free speech does work, that the right to publicly assemble and redress your government for grievance works. And by the way, this is the difference. Why is there so many protests against the war in Gaza? Because we're paying for it. We're paying for it. And by the way, the dichotomy inside the House of Representatives, and especially the Republican caucus, to give Israel everything they want, to try to attack the Biden administration for giving Israel or for not giving Israel everything they want. And then on the other hand, try to deny aid to Ukraine. Those two things don't square. If Israel can defend itself, so can Ukraine. Ukraine was invaded. They did not invade Russia. Ukraine was invaded. And remember the position that I have told you about on this program 100 times now. And I will stay consistent. Hamas invaded Israel, period. That happened. That's a fact. And what happened during that attack was medieval in its brutality. Medieval. Israel has every right to defend itself. It has every right to seek the eradication of Hamas as a functioning body. It does not have the right to commit genocide. Neither do the Russians, neither do the Ukrainians. So when Joe Scarborough goes on his own program and says, how come you college students aren't bitching about? Because we're not paying for it. We're not supplying money and arms to either side of the Sudanese civil war. We're not. Not to our knowledge. Certainly not openly as we are to the Israelis. The Israelis are using the money and weapons we are giving them to slaughter Palestinians, innocent ones. They should be better than that. I think deep down in their hearts, they are better than that. It also doesn't mean that we have to support it. We can curtail the support we give them. We can make it conditional. We've done it for nations all through our history. We can do it again. And to the places where the violent protests are happening, you can be better. There are peaceful protests happening all over this country. Bob's 100% correct. Robert Smith. I should say Robert, right? Sorry, Bob. Sorry, Robert. Robert Smith is 1,000% correct. It's free speech, but it needs to be peaceful. He's right. 7:34. The Kennedy Effect is live with you for the 19th of May, 2024. Wherever you might be on Facebook, thank you for allowing us to be a piece of your corner of the Facebook universe. You can come to my personal Facebook page, Jeff Kennedy, or that other side of information on Facebook, all the home for all things regarding our program. Lots of news articles there that you can peruse, read, debate about, talk to each other about. And they're not always about politics. There's science articles in there as well, environment, animal welfare, some of my favorites. Because Bob Smith is listening, I do want to say that I'm thrilled. I so deeply enjoy his Facebook posts because Bob works at a farm. He's not a farmer, but I think he donates time to a farm. He'll explain it to me, I'm sure. And he sends pictures of the farm animals, and they're just the best. They're just the happiest pictures. When you see all the sheep running, or you see the goats with that smile as there's hay hanging out of their mouths, or these lovely cows and horses. They're just the nicest pictures, and they always cheer up my day. And it's such a great thing. But I digress. So wherever you are on Facebook, check it out. That Other Side of Information is our home group Facebook page for all things concerning the program, and you can watch us live now. My Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, and That Other Side of Information on Facebook. That's also the name of our YouTube channel. We are live there right now, youtube.com/That Other Side of Information. And when we're done, that will be the best place to find the program and watch it again from the beginning if you have missed any of it. 3 hours is a long time. So if you missed any of the program so far, best way to catch up after we're done, go back to our YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information, and watch the show from the beginning. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. Wherever you are on Earth, if you can connect to the internet, you can listen to Hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and the TuneIn Radio app. And you can tell Alexa to play Hot101.net and the TCP Media Group as well. And Randall, welcome back to the program. How are you feeling? How is the family?
I'm feeling okay. Family, stressed out. Now two family, two adult household. Well, they're actually three because I got $3, but all of them two full-time working household to barely stay middle class and not dropping into working poor, etc., because of the economic monopoly that has become our country's economic. And we talked before that the monopoly. We haven't had our U.S. government has not brought an anti-monopoly suit against major corporations way back under President Carter in the late 70s, and that was to break up IT&T and AT&T into then 6 mini Bell. Well, they've all consolidated. I mean, Verizon, which was originally Bell Telephone mini Bell, absorbed Southern Bell, absorbed Southwestern Bell, and whether you look at meat processors in this country or whether you look at anything, any industry you go to, there's only 4 or 5. As mass media, there's 6 corporations that control that whole industry, whatever type of industry it is. Whether it's, again, meat, whether it's eggs, whether it's beef, whether it's pork, whether it's chickens, whether it's cereal. And, we've talked before, greed inflation. That's all it is, greed inflation. Most of the costs that all show are hurting Joe Biden on the inflation issue is all caused by greed inflation. I think it's not inflation not real inflation from the driving force of our economy, because our economy is driven by 80% consumer buying demand. So, head there, Jeff.
You bring up, well, you always bring up great points. You don't need me to throw sunshine on you, but I will do it because it's appropriate. I posted something on Facebook during the 2 weeks that we were away that I thought would get a hell of a lot more traction than it did. And I'm not the kind of person that posts something and then stares at the screen and waits for the the likes to start coming in. I look, but I don't sit there and stare and wait with, holding my breath, waiting for the likes and the whatever else to come in. Within, oh goodness, wow, within 2 miles, I would say, of where I work, there are 2 Wawa convenience store gas stations. 2 of them within about 2 miles. And it might be a tad more. I might have that wrong. It might be 3 miles, but They're very close to each other. Let's put it that way. And driving past them on a Friday, one was selling a gallon of regular gas for $3.49. The other for $3.89. So you had two gas stations within 2 miles of each other, a 40 cent difference in the price of a gallon of regular gas. That's the greed orchestrated inflation that Randall is talking about. Could I see a 5 cent difference between the two stations? Maybe even 10. Yeah. One is closer to a major highway. They always charge you a little more closer to a major highway because it's easy on off at the exit. The other one is further away. But 40 cents? 40? One of the memes that has been going around, I've actually tend to think that memes are a very effective way of communicating to people. They generally have very small, wordy blurbs on them that they're easy to comprehend. Not exactly a bumper sticker, but close. One of them, ones that has been floating around the internet or around Facebook, I should say, this week is picture of a price sign at a gas station. And you can tell that it's the same gas station, same sign, same location. That you can tell. And you can pretty much tell the photo hasn't been manipulated. It's not blurry around the edges. They're legit pictures to me. They look legit to me. And the blurb that tends to go with it is, here's the difference between, no, it isn't. It's a question. Oh, tell me how you're not better off now than you were 4 years ago. Because the price of a gallon of gas this time of year in 2020, when the economy had been shut down and employment was approaching 20%, at the height, initial beginnings very quickly went to a height of the pandemic, when Trump was still telling us to try to ingest bleach. And the economy was basically shuttered. And not just the US economy, the global economy was basically shut down. We were told to stay home, and not just stay home, but stay indoors. Gas was $1.51 a gallon. And now it's $3.50. Or in some places in the country, $4.50, $5.50. There's places in California that it's $7.50. Well, the economy is completely open. President Biden has added 25 million new jobs. Wages are up. That's not, it's an apples to oranges. It's not even an apples to oranges. It's an apples to hammers comparison. It's a rocks to feathers comparison. And it's misleading at a minimum. No kidding, gas was cheap when none of us were driving anywhere. No kidding. That's greed. These corporations cannot report the highest profits in the history of the planet, and then you still talk about inflation. The two things don't go together. They don't. Because the inflation that supposedly is causing us to pay higher prices should be affecting those corporations on the manufacturing side. It should be costing them more to make things, except it's not. They are using They don't like all this new money in the economy. They think it's theirs, not yours. You didn't earn it. You don't deserve it. That's ours. What's ours is ours because we don't want to pay taxes. We'll buy politicians that's cheaper to make sure that we don't have to pay taxes. And what's yours is ours. That's oligarchy. That's fascism. Oligarchy is the rich people. Fascism is when they buy off the government to do what they want. So Randall makes, as he usually does, and look, he and I disagree sometimes too. That's human. That's American. But as usual, he makes an excellent point. The difference between actual, real inflation and greed and wealth extraction, because that's what this is. When one gas station has gas for $3.40 and another one has it for $3.90, that's wealth extraction. When it still costs 25 cents to make a loaf of bread, but instead of being $4, it's now 10, that's wealth extraction. When the same rotisserie chicken that I would buy at Giant because I'm tired and I don't feel like making dinner is $5 and now it's 10, it's still the same chicken grown up at the same place. That's greed. That's greed. It's not inflation, it's greed. And Randall's right, by the way. There's only four major corporations that control about 70+% of the food distribution in the country. It might even be higher than that. It might be closer to 80%. There's only four companies that control that, for all intent and purpose, control the food supply. 4. It makes it easier for them to extract wealth because where are you going to go? When I was younger and started out in the warehouse business, we had about, yeah, and believe me, even then there wasn't a hell of a lot of choice, but we had about 6 companies that would deliver packages. There was UPS, FedEx, but there was also DHL, Tiger. There was 2 more whose names are escaping me at the moment. There's now only 2 left. Where are you going to go?
There was Pilot.
Pilot was one of them. Yes, and I can't remember that there was like 6 that we used to use.
I can't remember the fifth one either.
Yeah, I can't remember all of them, but you get my point though, and it's the point that Randall's making. That where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Go ahead, my friend. Keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm back on the topic of monopolistic industry,
Yes.
and I think I posted today to that other side information, showing in each separate type of industry in America, there's only 3 or 4 corporations in that specific industry. And at the bottom, I said, the mime I posted said, 6 corporations control 90% of mass media, and that's what all they care about. I mean, ABC is owned by Disney. CBS, I think, is owned by Comcast, which their corporate headquarters are right here, southeast part of PA where I live, in Philadelphia. And NBC is owned by Paramount, which is owned by
you're backward.
Giant.
You're backward.
I'm sorry?
You're close, but you're backward. NBC is Comcast. CBS is Paramount.
Okay.
I mean, you're right. You're right. They're just a little. They're still owned by other sources. You're right. I mean, you're right about that.
Giant corporations, which are owned by even gianter holding companies.
Right.
And those are owned by the billionaires that have the majority of stock in those corporations. And Yeah, we don't get the real truth. You have to dig on the. You have to look at different alternative sources on the internet to try and get a balance on any issue,
Yep.
any specific. You've got to try and read all sides of the coin, because mass media only presents one side, and that is, number one, we're corporate owned. Number two, we've got to have higher ratings.
Yep.
Number three, higher ratings equal a higher charge for commercials, for advertisement, and that makes us richer. So that's where we are, America. That's where we are. Go ahead.
No, I can't add much to that. I just can't. I mean, I've told this story a couple of times, and I know Randall's probably heard it, and he's probably sick of hearing it. You all might be sick of hearing it. In France, the average French citizen pays about $35 to $50 a month for cable phone and internet. And their mobile phone too, as well, by the way. Because they have well over 100 different providers. And it is French law that whoever builds the infrastructure must allow the other carriers to use it. They are free to charge them to use it, but even that charge is capped. So what does that do? It promotes competition. And this used to be something that, quote unquote, capitalists agreed on. That competition was good. It drove down prices. That's why we're always being told that the government can't do these things. It has to go to private industry because it'll drive down prices. How's that working out for healthcare? When 40 cents of every dollar goes right in the pocket of a stockholder, but you can't get an MRI. You can't see a doctor. So in France, they pay between $35 and $50 for mobile, television, and internet. I pay $200 for the internet because we have a monopoly here in this area, as there are regional monopolies throughout the country. I don't really have a choice. I have one other choice, which is a different cable company that charges exactly the same thing. I could try Verizon. Oh, darn it, they haven't come to our area yet. So what choice is that really? I remember when conservatives used to say, well, they still say it, that they believe in the free market, except nothing really proves that they do. The actions don't prove that they do, because we do have entirely too few companies involved in too many different sectors, maybe sectors is the right word, of our economy. Go ahead, my friend. What else you got? You put something in the chat earlier about the Supreme Court. Why don't you tell me about that? Because I was going to get to the seditious Supreme Court justice that we found out about this week as well.
Well, you mentioned way back in your program tonight that the only thing Trump did in his 4 years was to get massive tax breaks for the rich, for corporations, and just a little smidgen of tax breaks for the middle class, etc. And I wrote in the chat that no, his second biggest accomplishment was stacking the U.S. Supreme Court with right-wing billionaire and corporate bought justices to rule on any case they brought or involved them or their companies they owned. Well, we're going to give you a pass on that because you guys give us millions of dollars of free vacation, being on yachts, going to private hunting lodges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, there's no ethics. The quote ethics compromise the U.S. Supreme Court put in is just bogus BS.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Congress, passed legislation a couple of sessions back to require real ethics for lower federal courts, whether it's the appeals court or federal judge,
district courts, right? But here's the failure.
I'm sorry.
Here's the failure of that, and I think you'll agree with me. And then again, something that we've talked about here on the program a number of times, countless times. It's a little something in the Constitution called Article 3, Section 2. Congress shall have the right to establish and regulate the judiciary. Congress could, at any time, by passing simple legislation, not a constitutional amendment, but through legislation, 50% plus one majority, they could change the composition of the Supreme Court. It's already been done 7 times in our history. Instead of 9 justices, we could have 7. Or we could have 17. We could have 33. And they could pick ping pong balls out of a bowl to see which 9 of them would rule on a given case. We could double the size of federal districts, of actual court districts. I believe there's still only 9. There's been 9 since the turn of the 20th century. For over 100 years, there's only been 9 federal districts.
And yet the population has grown over threefold.
Why don't we have 18 districts? Or, geez, if you don't want to go that far, why don't we have 10? Among the things that I have been, I think, fairly, and I don't mean fairly as in sometimes, I mean fairly as in down the middle fairly, critical of this, of the times that the Democrats have had control of both chambers of Congress. Because remember, Congress is both chambers. We tend to always refer to House members as Congress people, and I guess they are. They're the representatives and the senators. 2 chambers. The 2 chambers make up Congress. When the Democrats have had complete control of Congress, among the things they have failed to do, codify Roe and a woman's right to her own reproductive health care and a right to privacy, by the way, codify that in law and change the face of the Supreme Court. And I don't just mean the face is on the Supreme Court. I mean the actual, the makeup of the court. And again, it doesn't have to be 9 justices to 11 or 9 down to 7. I think a very novel idea would be to have 37 justices. 9 times 4 is 36. You can't have an even number. You need an odd number. So I'll take 37. 37 Supreme Court justices. But only 9 work on any one given case. and they can pull ping pong balls out of a bowl. We've changed the court before, and we can do it again. The forces in this country that would rail against President Biden and his wish, and I don't actually know that it's a wish, but he did commission a study on changing the court. We can't, quote unquote, I'm going to get in trouble for this one. The do-gooders, too many of the do-gooders on the left. We have to always be the adults in the room. We have to be the mature ones. Let's get along. Let's all get along. Kumbaya. When there's 40% of the country that would just as soon put us in camps and shoot us as anything else, you can't always put your arm around them. So for the do-gooders on the left who would say, oh, you can't pack the court, it's already packed. You think Trump chose these folks in their 40s by mistake? Then again, he didn't choose them. The Federalist Society told them who he would be choosing, but that's a whole other kettle of fish, isn't it? Do you think he chose folks in their 40s by mistake? Brett Kavanaugh could be there for the next 40 years. Amy Coney Barrett could be there for 50 years. The oldest of his picks was Gorsuch, who was in his early 50s, I think, when he first sat, 52 maybe. He could be there for 30 or 40 years. I'll take 37 Supreme Court justices and then let them all pull lots to see who gets to rule on any given case, so that the people, the plaintiffs and the defense, they don't know who they're going to get in front of them. Then we'll see how many cases the Koch network wants to create out of thin air and find people to be the face of that. The baker who doesn't want to bake a gay couple of cake. Well, we'll search the whole country to see who we can offer $100,000 to bring this case, and then we'll pay for the whole thing. Unless you're a twisted Christian nationalist evangelical like Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby, who can pay for it themselves. But then again, they got help from the Koch network too. These folks are not lords over us. They are unelected. They serve for life. You want to know a case I'd like to see brought to the Supreme Court? Because the conflicts inherent in it would be fascinating. There's a term limit on the presidency. 2 terms, 8 years, or a total no more than 10 if a vice president should ascend to office in the middle of a term. House of Representatives has to run for re-election every 2 years. Senate every 6. But the judiciary is appointed for life. That would seem to me let me back up. The framers, Jefferson in Federalist Papers and his letters back and forth to the other framers, made it very clear that while there are 3 branches of government, they are co-equal branches of government. He also made it very clear that there's a reason why the judiciary is listed 3rd. Because even though these branches are separate, co-equal, meaning each has equal responsibilities and is equal in its importance. It's the way the framers designed it. They still listed the judiciary 3rd, and they listed the House of Representatives 1st. So even in the construction of Congress within the Constitution, the House is still listed 1st, the People's House. The British equivalent of the House of Commons. The House of Lords, the Senate, is listed 2nd. The judiciary is listed 3rd. So if you have co-equal branches of government, How is it constitutional that they have separate terms of service? The only way you could term limit the president was to make a constitutional amendment against it, because it would have been simple legislation would have been unconstitutional. Co-equal. So yeah, you want to reform the Supreme Court? And I do. Desperately. I'll take that. Simple legislation from Congress. Sure, fine. You're all appointed for life, like the Constitution says. Nominated by the president, advice and consent of the Senate. We'll have 37 of you. But only 9 of you get to argue or get to sit in judgment on any one case at a time. Not the same 9 of you for all these different cases. Pull them out of a bowl. You get this 9. Oh, that's the 9 you got. Oh, well, we drew lots. That's the 9 you got. And neither side can really complain about any biases. We're literally going to pull names out of a hat. Or, sorry, ping pong balls out of a fishbowl. My name's on a ping pong ball. Randall pulls, he's on it. Oh, well, then we get to sit on this case. I pull, the ping pong balls are numbered 1 through 37. You either get 1 through 9. Oh, you got number 10. You're not sitting on this one. Sounds fair to me. It's called court reform. We can do it. One of the great failings of when the Democrats had complete control of Congress post Clinton is not codifying Roe and not changing the face of the judiciary. You don't need the Constitution to do it. You simply need simple legislation because the Constitution says that. Firing Louis DeJoy wouldn't be so goddamn bad either. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah,
we appear to have all the time in the world because it doesn't appear that my guest is coming at this point, and that's fine. It happens. He told me he would be in late, so something must have happened, and that's okay. Life gets in the way. Not a biggie. We're cool. He'll come another time. We'll have great time. But for now, Randall, have at it, my friend.
Yeah, you talk about lottery. I didn't want to go to college after I graduated June of 1970. Excuse me. My mom pushed me. Why? She didn't want me to see being sent to Vietnam and being cannon folder, because there was still exemptions from the draft if you were an undergraduate. They'd taken away years before exemptions for masters, PhD, etc. But they still had an exemption when I went to college in August of 1970. And then I think it was Tricky Dick Dixon.
Yeah.
I think he's the one that said, we're doing away with undergraduate college deferment. So in January, I think it was January of 71, they had the big giant pool of undergraduates plus the 18-year-olds in this country after they had to register to be drafted. Males. Remember that, folks?
Yes.
Males.
Yeah.
Anyway, I saw a fellow freshman. I saw sophomores, juniors, seniors get like 9, 10, 11, 12 as their number. I got 326. And since then, I have said, when it comes to the draft, World War III come and go, and I will never know because I will never be drafted. And yeah, all my friends, they all ran out and joined the reserve the next day. Why? Because there was national, whether it was National Army Reserves or National Naval Reserves or or they ran out and joined National Guard, in their state. Why? Because both National Guard and Federal Reserve were never sent to Vietnam. Now, it was only the cannon fodder of if you're a poor white, if you're a poor black, if you're a poor brown, yeah, you're going to Vietnam, your draft board would say. And so, yes, I totally agree in lotteries to equalize society. You know, if President Bone Spurs hadn't got his bogus father's doctor to write, oh, he's got bone spurs 8 times. Yeah, I would love to see Trump in Vietnam and survive Vietnam. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't disagree.
So I like the idea of like expand.
Hey, can I ask you
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I wanted to ask you this is a very theoretical question. It just kind of, you made me think of it when you were, draft deferments and Kristen and I watched a documentary on I think it was Netflix. There was a 2-hour long kind of biography. Was it 2 hours, hour and a half? Either were, of Dan Rather, and of course they spent a lot of time on the way he got fired from CBS with his reporting of George W. Bush's, very, very dodgy, spotty, Air Force Reserves career, and conveniently avoiding Vietnam as well. That, as did President Clinton, by the way. So that said, do you think we as Americans overvalue and overemphasize the military service of a president? That means we place way too much, that we put too much emphasis on it, that it's a bit too important to us. Do you think that's possible, or do you think, is it just me, or?
I think it comes down to generational. For example, in the 19th century, most presidents, Grant, they were all generals in the Union Army. Because Republicans after the Civil War controlled, they always won the presidency until the 20th century. And we got Teddy Roosevelt, a progressive liberal Republican that did all these incredible reforms. You Americans are not going to die from salmonella. Excuse me, I don't even say the word. You're not going to die from beef that is rotted.
Well,
you're not. We're going to break up. We're going to break up the monopolies in the 19th century in this country. Yeah, he was a war hero from the Spanish-American War.
Yep, and ran on that too. And he ran.
Who did we get in 1952, the year I was born, to be president? That both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party were begging him to run under their ticket.
Yeah,
and he was Republican. That's fine. That's fine. But here we have the general that controlled the whole European theater against Nazi Germany, against fascist Italy.
Yep. Leader of Antifa. the original leader of Antifa. Yeah. Yeah.
But when the point of society, no, I don't agree now that
right.
No matter how much respect we have for veterans, even though it's a volunteer army now, even though only 5% of Americans are required to put their life in danger, protect our freedoms, protect our country. Now, it's that's not a big issue for most people in America now.
I hear you. Hey, guess what? My guest came in, so I need to say good night. But I'm very grateful to you, as always. Okay, very, very grateful to you, and I want you to take care of yourself. I know I say that every week, but I mean it. For God's sake, please take care of yourself. Okay.
Yeah, I love you, and give love to Christine, and you're my IT tech wizard running. I love you too, bro. God bless and good night.
Thank you, my friend. You take care of yourself. So I told you that we actually had a guest today, and we do. At least he's in there somewhere. He's there somewhere. Camera and mic aren't on yet, but he's in the room. Let's put it that way. So hopefully he'll be joining us to where you can see and hear him very shortly. It's Rich Wilkins. Rich is a friend of mine, and believe me, of his list of accomplishments, that one is way, way down on the bottom and in the fine print, and has a lot of asterisks in front of it. He is a complete, consummate, total, just elections and political pro. There's nothing about the business he doesn't know. The data, the numbers, the demographics, the populations, messaging, advertising, lit, television. He's just a good dude. He's a good guy. He knows what he's doing. And the reason I had asked him to come to the program, and the reason I'm going to have to ask him to come back to the program at some point, because we only got 40 minutes left, is because I have framed this to you, my friends, folks out there, for a while now, since the beginning of the calendar year, is that the theme of our program for this crucial election cycle was going to be given to us by Bobby Kennedy. How, in the so-called richest country on earth, can we have people who are starving, who can't see a doctor, can't keep a roof over their heads, can't go to school? How do we allow that in the richest country on earth? And I've also framed 2024 to you in that either this November 5th is going to be the next in a series of elections, or it's going to be our last. And nobody knows better about all this stuff than Rich. And I'm very blessed that you're here. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to beat another appearance out of you at some point. Be here a little longer, but welcome. Thank you for gracing the program and giving us your, donating your time to us. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. I don't know how I can live up to that introduction, but thank you so much.
We always have, whenever we have a new guest to the program, because we've been fortunate enough to have some repeat guests before, open with the same question. So I'm going to do it again. Who is Rich Wilkins, and how did you get here?
Oh, God. I'd like to think how you get here part's the complicated part. It is a moving target over 20 years of being in campaigns. I'm reminded all the time when I to younger staff people on campaigns that some of them weren't even eligible to vote when I worked as an intern on the Rendell O'Brien coordinated in 2002. And God knows the world's changed like 5,000 times since then. And if you've been around campaigns that long, why you're there is going to change in that time. Frankly, I got into it because it was something interesting, right? I stayed in it probably more because of what the experiences gave me. You meet so many different people. You get perspectives you would have never thought of when you do campaigns, because you get to know the other operatives, you get to know the volunteers, you get to know the candidates. A lot of these people that get involved are like really different right from the start than you are, right? And so, you know, I'd like to think the Eastern area where I grew up is a pretty good microcosm of America. That our area is kind of the most swing place in the United States. Um, in the last since 2008, there are like 5 districts in the country that have pretty much mirrored the presidential results, and right here in PA7 is one of them. So I'd like to think I grew up in a place where I got to see a lot of stuff. But the reality of that is, until you get out across the country and you go live in Iowa, or you go live in, North Carolina or New Jersey, or, any of these different states I got to go to, you don't really know the stuff that you're going to learn and the people that you're going to meet and the issues that they're going to face. And so why you are kind of who you are and why you stay in this, if you stay in it long enough, it should be actually a moving target. And that's not even a bad thing. So that's how I'd explain myself.
I think at times, from the outside looking in, if you're not in this world every day, and I would normally say the way we are, but you are in it way deeper than me. Campaign quote unquote professionals are kind of looked at like lawyer jokes. They're just kind of to get paid. And I don't doubt that there are plenty of people who are in it just to get paid. And they'll represent folks from any side of the aisle, from any political spectrum, because it's a paycheck and they're happy to do it. How many folks do you run into? Because I think you do this, from my humble opinion. How many are in it because they actually believe in the candidate they're working for, and or the policies that they themselves believe are the right ones for the country? Because it seems to me you got to have some kind of core belief, I would hope. I know that there are people in the business that don't, but you got to have some kind of core belief. I mean, if you think that 40 cents of every healthcare dollar going into a CEO's pocket is a really good thing, I don't know how you can work for a candidate who supports a national health service, or let alone Medicare for all, but an actual national health service, which is how far I would go, by the way. But how do you find the folks that you run into and that you work with? They must believe in something to do this.
Most of them do. That's the good news. Like most people that work in this are passionate, and they come from a cause, and they come from a beginning. That's a good point. There are people who don't. If you hang around long enough, there will be candidates who disappoint you too. So you will have people on your resume who you're like, maybe I wish I didn't do that. And that's not really your fault. When you say, though, like, we're way deeper in, I actually am going to challenge that a little bit. I'm a believer that sort of each leg of a stool has to be there. That, you've got the candidates, and they have to be people who are motivated to be a senator or state representative or whatever, right? And you're going to get certain good and bad traits just because they're willing to do that. You're going to get people who want to manage campaigns. We're strange. We're different. We have to come in from a certain perspective. And a lot of times I think kind of that tension with activists is we have to think about the campaign differently, right? The activist has an end goal, and the end goal is usually policy victory. That person is going to go into office and do the things that they want them to do, which is why they got involved, right? So in 2002, for me, I was opposed to the Iraq War, right? There was that. There was the fact that Bethlehem Steel was about to kind of get their final nail in the coffin. So labor jobs leaving where I come from. Those things were front and center on my mind. And I was very lucky that my first campaign I'm involved in, Ed O'Brien is our congressional candidate, and he was like the president of the Steelworkers Union here and running for Congress, and happened to be a rare anti-Iraq war candidate at that time. As you, I'm sure, recall, not all Democrats were on the same
No.
page about that
No.
war at all. So I was fortunate, coming in as, a young person. I was like, wow, I'm getting everything that I would ever want in a candidate. Well, he didn't win. And, somebody that came in that age area, we learned a very cold lesson. John Kerry got 48% of the vote in 2004, and he got 0% of the vote, or of the actual government. It's not like in the United Kingdom or Israel or Germany, where if you get 48%, you're going to get at least a few ministry seats, and you get to influence something. We got nothing. We got the Bush presidency, and I know that there's been a lot of effort to rehabilitate that. And certainly, he doesn't seem like the worst man that we have elected in America in recent times, but the presidency was bad. It was genuinely bad. A lot of things. I mean, if you were a resident of the city of New Orleans, you're not exactly praising the Bush presidency, right? So we learned kind of a cold lesson generationally, the people that were becoming of age right after 2000. The Gore election, the Gore defeat, is probably the most consequential election post 1968 that a lot of the country has had to live through. And so when I say like each leg of a stool, I love that activists have like a passion, that they care, that they will want to do everything humanly possible to get to the outcomes they're looking for. The tension usually comes that operatives like us are the people that say no. Candidates don't. In fact, one of the things I tell every candidate is you don't have to be the one to say no. And that can be tough. As you know, last year I managed Tamika Lane in her Superior Court race. And it seemed like everybody had Judge Lane's cell phone number, right? And I would always say,
I think I might.
yeah, no, I mean,
and if that number made it down as far as me, then a lot of people have it.
No, because she called all of you on the Pennsylvania State Committee personally when we were seeking that endorsement. And so a lot of people wanted to call her and ask her questions about campaign resources, about the decisions the campaign was going to make. And the constant tension, and God knows I love her. So I really, really wanted to protect her from this, is the candidates don't want to be the person to say no when, a county comes in and says, we need $1,000 to run our canvas program or whatever it is. Right. And I do that a lot. And so some people will say, oh, he doesn't care about this, but it's not that. It's that when you have a global view of a statewide campaign or a state house campaign or any campaign, you know what the budget is. You know how much resource you have. You know that God knows we wish we could do everything, right? I wish I could have a poll worker at every single poll in the state of Pennsylvania for every election, and have 10 people canvassing their precinct at the same time. But we make decisions. And so I think to each leg of a stool, we all have our role. And for me, at least, that's I get the tension, and I'm an adult now, and people are mad. I understand. And sometimes they should be mad. Sometimes I wish my answer was yes. But we do our best. That's what I would say.
8:30 Eastern Time. This is the Kennedy Effect Live with you for the 19th of May, 2024. We will not be with you next week. It's Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy it, the unofficial kickoff to summer. Spend time with friends, family, whatever it is that you do on a Memorial Day. I hope you're actually off as we in this country continue to devalue federal holidays. I hope you actually have off, have a long weekend. Do whatever it is that you do, enjoy it. I myself will be taking in some friends, family, hopefully some day trips, a baseball game. I hope that you will be doing the same thing. We will not be with you next week. We return on June 2nd. We have about a half hour left of the program, not even really that much by the time that we sum up and sign off, about 20 to 25 minutes left with Rich. I'm going to make sure he comes back again. I'm going to berate him relentlessly until he says yes, and then he comes back again so we can have a longer conversation. YouTube.com, that other side of information on YouTube, always the best place to catch up on the program. If you missed anything, the entirety of the program will be there after we're done. Take it in throughout the week. 3 hours, I know, is a lot of time. Take it in throughout the week. Join us. The listenership continues to grow. I think I might have broken the 600,000 mark. I'm not sure, but we'll take that. I'll have to do some math. I'll do some fancy math and check that out. So do that as well. Facebook, my Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, that other side of information, on YouTube, hot101.net and TCP. About 25 minutes left with Rich. I hate to jump ahead. Because I don't want to jump to the end of the story, as bad as a reader as I am. But when I say, and I have said for a long time, again, it's really since the beginning of the year, that I really do think that this 2024 election, and that's from dog catcher to president, is really a referendum on us as much as it is about the candidates. How are we the supposed richest, largest, most powerful, richest country on earth when we have the homeless population that we do? We have schools that are still filled with lead pipes and asbestos, where we pump billions into private education for rich white kids who can already afford it. We can, 2% of the poorest among us serve in the military. We give $500+ billion to the fossil fuel industry and still pay $4 a gallon for gas when it should be $1. We spend $1 trillion a year on the Defense Department, half of which is privatized. Medicare is now half private. Is this going to be the next election or the last? When you sit back and maybe kind of separate yourself from it a little bit, first off, is all of that hyperbole, or do you see truth in it? And where are we going? What worries you? What gives you hope that November will be just the next election instead of the last?
Okay, so I don't want to go totally dark.
I thought I did that.
No, you did a good job. So the United States election is obviously one of the biggest events in the world this year. And I don't want to in any way downplay it, because I do think we have to understand what the opposition is, right? But it is not simply an American, it's not simply American values at stake. There are a number of elections going on in the world this year, possibly in the United Kingdom, absolutely in Mexico, India. There are a number of other major elections that there's a lot on the line, right? I mean, to me, the one that's most underrated is India. Here you have the most populous nation in the world.
One of the largest economies.
Yeah, it's a growing economy, fast, and it's a nuclear power. And if you just sit down and look at the map some night, and you realize all the things close to India and the hotspots,
they share a border with China, which is quite heavily militarized, and the two nations have exchanged fire across the border on a semi-regular basis.
Just think about this. Pakistan and India's capitals are really not that far from an area of the world where India, Pakistan, and China, all of whom are at least rumored nuclear powers, have disputes about land.
Yeah. Old-fashioned territorial disputes.
Yeah. If that doesn't gets your interest, I don't know what will, right? The dark side of this whole thing is it's not just a left-right continuum of what is going on in the United States or the world. There's essentially a view of how the world's going to be run. Um, Either people are going to vote for their government and choose, at least, I mean, look, I realize our democracy is not perfect, right? But for the most part, I think that a sober-minded person who just looks at the two options running for president right now understands that there are differences in the two, even if you don't like either one. But we have to understand that in China right now, a country that is not like we don't really depict it correctly in the United States. Like it is a powerhouse of a place in Moscow, which is not the Soviet Union. They are not as strong as 1965, but still a nuclear power that can blow the world up 1,000 times if it wanted to. There are a lot of these capitals where the leadership, not just Putin, but the oligarchs around Putin, right, view the world in the standpoint of they think like 30 guys with a lot of money should make all the decisions for society. There is an element of that in the United States right now. And I joked about Bush before. But like, I guess the thing that sort of redeems Bush and why people are like nice about him now is that he at least espouses like values that are in line with democracy and not like that he should have, when, Obama won, he should have just like stayed in the White House and militarized Washington, right? Like, I mean, it's the lowest damn bar I can come up with, but
that's not breaking new ground, really.
No, but like this is the real divide now in the world is the division of like who do you think should govern? Like, should the people have any say, or should 30 guys in a room with a lot of money decide everything in your society? That's a pretty like wild dividing line to have in 2024. I don't think most people, I think one of the problems we have politically is that like most people don't understand that. So, like, that's actually a division we have. So like that's the dark side of it. The other dark piece I'll throw at it is when Trump won. I remember being in Washington after the election a couple weeks later. It was like December, and I was visiting some friends who were in the Obama administration and were leaving. I remember being out with them, and I made this prediction that I wish was more wrong. I said at the time that I thought we were entering into a period of less stability and where we would have a lot of presidents over the next 20 years, right? We don't give ourselves enough credit for how much the world changed between the year 2000 and 2016. With the advent of real disinformation campaigns, through the internet, with the ability of people to organize through the internet. And I mean, just think of some of the political positions in the United States today that are mainstream that in 1996, if you had espoused them, you would have, like, your family would have shunned you. But now you can go on the internet and you can find people who agree with you, and you can organize, and you can lobby. I mean, like, you can do things that just forget about it 20 years ago, right? And we as a society kind of let that go wild west. And I would have to say, even though I love Barack Obama and worked for OFA and everything, like, even through the Obama years, we kind of let the internet kind of just go. And a lot of people got together and organized around causes that maybe we in previous times wouldn't have been facing right now.
Hasn't that organizing worked both ways, though? As much of the internet that is dedicated to Jewish space lasers, is the same one that gave us Bernie Sanders that said, no, $15 is not outrageous for a minimum wage. Medicare for all is not outrageous. In fact, if you really go back to the original Medicare legislation, that's how it was written, is that every 10 years, the eligibility age would drop until it was the national healthcare system. So that organizing is going
Both
on,
ways. Absolutely.
is happening on both ends.
One of my old professors said this to me in 2016. He never thought he would live to see a credible presidential candidate that called themselves a socialist, right? I mean, it is absolutely true that there are some people that had been kind of pushed to the side by, I don't want to call them fascists, but some fascist light views about who should be allowed to be a part of a debate and who shouldn't. There was a lot.
Part of it's the wealth doctrine, is it? That you know, as a part of a push of this white Christian nationalism. Well, how do we know? How does God tell us who should lead us? Well, the rich people, except the ones that are telling you that God said the rich people because we're rich are the rich people. They're the ones that are telling you. Well, obviously, it's us. We have all the money.
I forget what the doctrine is called, but there is a whole sect of right-wing Christianity that believes that prosperity is literally God's doctrine. Blessing. That he is blessing these people, and so we need to follow them type thing. And look, again, I think it does go both ways, but a lot of positions like that, I think, have gained followings that it's scary. And so I think we're in a world now where there's more information available to you, and B, there's more groups who can fit your worldview than there ever were before.
Who can tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly. And so in 2016, I said, something want that regulated, because that can get real dicey real quick. But just think about some of the troll farms, some of the misinformation sites. There are people living in Europe who make American news sites that are all fake and make thousands of dollars a month, telling you that Joe Biden actually has a cabal of children hidden in Arlington, Virginia, in the sewers, and this stuff's happening. We're far away from where we were in 1950, and our society. And this is the good part now. Our society is way different than it was 100 years ago. We're only a little over 100 years since the entire electorate was male. That's kind of wild to say to people. 110 years ago, your great grandmother could not vote. So when we talk about
couldn't get a credit card, couldn't open a bank account, couldn't own
do
property.
Anything. Essentially, the definition of second-class citizenship, right? We will have a majority of the electorate this year. Depending on which pollster you ask, it could be 50.5%, it could be 52%, and that might decide the election. But there will be a majority of the electorate that is women. We're only
and they already are a majority of the population. They're about 54% of the population.
Exactly. So we're almost there, where we're voting in line gender-wise with who lives here. 60 years ago, there were very, very few. There weren't none, because different states had different rules. But pre-civil rights legislation, there weren't really large groups of Black voters in the electorate. I wouldn't say necessarily that it's a huge voting bloc like a majority today, but it is a voting bloc now that is getting closer again to its societal representation. We have a more diverse electorate today. We have a higher educated electorate today. We have more religions represented at an acceptable level in the electorate today. All of that is a good thing. The only downside to that, and this is what we've encountered with really Trumpism in general, is that brings out people who are scared. People who are lied to, who, when people tell me he has working class support, it gets me really mad. But people that go to work and that don't necessarily have the ability and time to study the issues and study what's happening and study who it is that's actually causing their inflation and things like that. And along comes these candidates like Trump that say, I alone can fix it for you. That's the downside of it. But it's still a better thing for us in general that we have a diverse electorate now. And yes, we have to deal with a little bit of the ignorance, hopefully not forever. Hopefully we're getting better at it. But, you know, there's a give and take to anything. Anything good will cost you a little bit in politics. That is something you have to accept. It can be Obamacare costing you the House. It could be, you know, losing a town council seat by one vote. You just, you know, you might have to give something to get something. The good news, though, in the end, I still believe we're going to get where we need to get. I've remained more optimistic about Biden's campaign than a lot of people. And that's not necessarily to say that everything's perfect about it or that you should be like really excited right now or anything like that. I'm not really telling anybody listening here how to feel. But if you look at Donald Trump's polling, even when he's winning, he's basically right around where he has been in the last two elections. He is not sitting at 56, 57%. Yeah.
There's not a growth of that electorate. There's not a, right.
No.
But it is enough to win.
Oh, it's steady.
No, you know, no Republican presidential candidate has won the popular vote since George H.W. Bush. I can make an historical argument that there hasn't been a legally elected one since 1956, but there's enough there to win the Electoral College, which is something interestingly now that Republicans have turned to. I've gotten some pushback on this program about actually praising the Koch network, because when they decided they were going to purchase the Senate, they didn't go spend billions of dollars in California because they knew they'd never win it, but they bought Idaho and the Dakotas and Wyoming, and they didn't have to buy the Confederacy. That was already done. You know, the Confederacy was already dead red to start with as soon as it became an anti-people of color party under Nixon. But he did buy the upper Middle West, the states that were traditionally blue, Missouri, the states that were traditionally blue states. The Kochs did buy them off, and they bought those Senate seats. And it would seem to me that the Republican Party has now moved into that kind of not exactly the same, but a similar tactic. Like we can't win a national popular vote, but we can pick off just enough states to take an electoral college. So we can lose the 2016 election by 6 million votes, but we won the electoral college.
So I always tell this people, they want you to tell them we're going to win or we're going to lose, right? And there's absolutely no way somebody can sit here and tell you with certainty in a country where every Democratic nominee from 1996 to today has received at least 48% of the vote. And every Republican nominee from 2000 to today has received at least 46% of the vote. So you basically start national election 48, 46. This hasn't changed whether it was Mitt Romney or Donald Trump. It hasn't changed whether it was John Kerry or Barack Obama. It's 48, 46 on day one. It's always going to be close. And the possibility of losing is always there. The thing about it is both sides have become pretty knowledgeable about this. You don't see a lot of spending in places where like you could never win. You'll see like in Omaha, Nebraska, you'll see the Democrats buy, but they're buying to win the electoral vote there. They're not buying because they're going to win Nebraska. They're not under any, you know, they're not under any illusions that they're going to win the whole state.
Nebraska is right after one of those states that proportionately
divides
its electoral votes that based on region. I think it is.
I think it's three
congressional district or something like that. Yeah.
Them in Maine, they both go by congressional districts, and there's a district in northern Maine that they have a shot at, and there's a district in Omaha that we have a shot at, and both sides will spend at those. Other than that, you're not going to see the Democratic Party spend in a Republican plus 25 state.
Right.
You're not going to see the Republicans spending. Well, okay, Donald Trump might believe he's going to spend in California or New York or New Jersey. I mean, he just had a rally in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
But
Isn't
like
it
the
interesting?
actual,
I'm really gonna diverge here really quick, but I just have to. Maybe I'm searching for my own justifications here, but isn't it always interesting to you that when he has a rally, he doesn't go. He doesn't have a rally in New York City. He has one in Buffalo. He doesn't go to Philadelphia. He goes to Mechanicsburg. He doesn't go to, he doesn't go to Atlantic City even. He goes to Wildwood. He doesn't go to Charlotte, North Carolina. He goes to Raleigh or Durham or somewhere. You know what I mean? Like it's always, yeah, I'm in the big states, but not where all the people
no,
are necessarily. I'm just wherever you can
I
get a
think you
rate
hit.
for a firehouse cheap. I'm thinking.
Well, you kind of hit though on. I don't want to say brilliance of Trumpism because I don't want to give them that. But when Kellyanne and Bannon, and there was a guy named Bossie who was a deputy manager that friends of mine that know Republican operative world say was actually the smartest of the three, right? When they took over, he stopped going to Mississippi. He stopped going to, Tennessee, and he started going to swing states. And you're right. He went to the farm show complex in Dauphin County, not even Harrisburg, right?
Right.
What they figured out, Mitt Romney did considerably better than him in places like Nassau County in 2012 to 2016, right? They understood that highly educated Republican that lives in these wealthier suburbs near a big city, maybe went to Columbia or something, was not overly happy about Donald Trump. Didn't love Donald Trump. They were the ones that could lose to Hillary. They went to Luzerne County. They went to Cambria County. They went to a lot of places in Pennsylvania, for instance, that were traditionally Democratic. God, Paul Kanjorski, Jack Murtha, like traditionally these were places that had powerful Democratic congressmen, right? But they didn't exactly fit the coalition of the Obama era. And they sent him to a lot of these markets. They're cheaper to buy television in, cheaper to get a venue in, more open to him. They went to those places and they essentially they traded the Long Island Republican for the Hazleton Republican. And it worked pretty well electorally. I mean, it won 2016. The fact that he lost the 2020 popular vote by 8 million votes, but was under 100,000 votes from winning a clear majority of the Electoral College. The trade was a great trade for them.
I was thinking too, not going to Detroit, but going to Lansing, like that same kind of idea.
Absolutely. My dad has a cousin out in the Flint area, and like the fact that like he saw a bunch of Trump signs popping up in the middle of 2016, right? Like they understood. I think they understood they could not win just a bare knuckle brawl trying to out count us for every vote. Like they understood it. They looked at the best, most straight pathway for them from 0 to 270, and they gave it their damnedest to try to get there. And it worked once. And what we should fear, again, I believe in the end Biden will win the election. I think it might be ugly. I think we might all lose years off of our lives getting there. But I think that in the end, the message they're selling is not emotionally satisfying, but I think it is where they need to be, and I think they'll get there. However, what we should be afraid of is the future. The next Trump may not be somebody with 50 years of celebrity to disqualify them with. They may not say things that are, frankly, just like I don't want to call them lies because I don't even know what he believes is true or not. Like they're just insane
Yeah,
sometimes.
Tom
Uh,
Hartman calls them the more competent fascists.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're going to find someone eventually because I mean, look, every party has to find someone to lead them when their leader is no longer capable. They're going to find somebody after him. I hope they're every bit as incapable as he is. Um, they're probably like the odds of getting that repeatedly are not great. And God knows there's some sick people around Washington that want to be the next Trump and are studying that right now.
They want to get rich. We have about 3 minutes left, not even really, because I need to say goodnight. We got about 2 minutes. A couple really quickies, if I could. Like they're not yes or no questions. That's a stupid, but that's all I got left. That's all I got time for. Are you concerned with the polling numbers inside the Black and Latino communities for President Biden?
To a point, yes, because it is a trend line that began essentially after 08. We have gone down every election a couple points. So yes. Now, do I think that they're actually 20 points off from last time? No.
Are you concerned with the youth pushback against President Biden, especially in their voting enthusiasm, their plan to either vote or not vote, and surrounding the Israeli Gaza conflict?
Not as much, simply because the polling is so far off of 2020. And then the polling on the Israeli Gaza situation is all over the place. Depending how you ask the question, you can get 65% support for Israel, or you can get 85% for a ceasefire. Like it's so far all over the place. I just think there's a lot of factors there that are beyond control, and I don't. Historically, there's not been a situation where the United States had a foreign conflict that we were not involved in physically that ended up tilting an election on its own. So less so, but when you're dealing with a 70,000 vote margin, always be worried about everything.
Is it time to abolish the Electoral College?
Oh God, yeah. Now, can you do it? No. Yeah, but yes, we are well past the point of that.
I spoke about things that we can fix in this country through simple legislation. I don't think the Electoral College is one of them, but the courts are. Article 3, Section 2, Congress shall establish and regulate the courts. Is it time to change the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Did the Democrats miss an opportunity when they had complete control of the government to change the face of the Supreme Court and codify Roe?
Well, obviously, because they didn't do either one, yes. But I'm not sure it was as within their grasp as a lot of people think.
But it is legislation to change the courts, though. The Constitution gives Congress the
Oh,
power
totally.
to establish and regulate, which
We
means
were going to have
percent plus one congressional majority, Senate majority, or House majority, Senate majority.
Our 50+1 was tough with a West Virginia Democrat as 50. Where we blew that was Maine and North Carolina in 2020.
West Virginia Democrat.
Yeah,
in air quotes.
We should have won North Carolina or Maine in 2020, and then this would have been a much different conversation.
You must please come back. I actually have to sign off. The Villain's View comes up in less than 60 seconds. Please come back and see us. Hang there just for 1 second. Stay there for 1 second. That's the end of it for this week. We are not with you next week. Come back on June 2nd. The Kennedy Effect live with you for June 2nd, 2024. Dear goodness, we're going to be halfway through the year. So be with me on the 2nd. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Remember what it's about. We've done as much damage as we can do for 1 week. For everyone at hot101.net, TCP, and George, and everybody here at the house, and everybody with the Kennedy Effect, thank you, thank you, thank you. The Villain's View starts right now. We'll see you on June 2nd.